G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Sunday, the 4th of January 2018, and the time here is 08:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Well folks, I know it's been a while since I've done a video, and I've done that on purpose, to be honest with you. My main reason for doing that was I wanted to just sit back and see where all this craziness was going. And I mean, just there's literally thousands of people out there at the moment, you know, FISA Memo, blah, 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 blah. And it kind of, it's a lot of overkill and a lot of overhype, if I've got to be honest, but the hype's relevant because, you know, this is very, very serious what we're talking about here. But the thing that amazes me is that people are not listening to the whole machinations, really. If you remember in QAnon post, he kept saying, do you play chess? Do you want to play a game, you know, chess game? Well, if you know anything about chess, and, you know, look, I got to be honest, I'm not the greatest chess master in the world, but I would probably say that I'm not too bad at it. I was taught properly to play. If you're a chess person, then you obviously know that it's a very strategic and very thoughtful game. So what I'm trying to say there is that you don't just go and sit in a chessboard and, no, it's not drafts. You don't just sit there and plot pieces down. Excuse me. Morning coffee. You actually try and make sense of your moves, and you've got to try and move, you know, 3 to 4 pieces in front. I read an article about Garry Kasparov years and years ago, like the Grand Chess Master, and someone asked him, how do you beat your opponents? And he said, well, I beat them before I get there. So, you know, that's the kind of summation of chess, if you want. You've got to know what you're going to do 4 moves ahead, but you've also got to make sure you know what you're going to do if you make the wrong move. So in other words, you've got to have an out. You've got to have your defense and your attack planned. And if you do get into if you do have to go defensive, how do you get out to attack? Because you can't win unless you attack in chess. It's as simple as that. You can be defensive, but you've got to know what you're doing, put it that way. So my point being is that I find the hype on the FISA memo, and quite rightly, I suppose it has to be, but everyone needs to understand that it's just the first pawn being shifted on the board. Now remember, we've said this many times before. I know what's going on, and if you're watching this, you probably know what's going on. But if you're Billy Bob Joe Sixpack, sitting in a lounge room, drinking beer, watching footy, and, you know, watching the ABC, MSN media, you haven't got a clue. And even today, after the FISA memo, you still haven't got a clue. So the thing here is to get those people who are like this to start to go like that. And that's not an easy job. And don't forget, as I said, if you play chess, Trump was chosen by someone, you know, 4 years ago. That's how far back this would have gone. 4 years ago, they would have approached him and said, we want you to run for the presidency. And at first he would have gone, yeah, right, no thanks. And then, of course, there's a lot of negotiations that have to be done. And then they would have sat down for over a year. And do you think it's any coincidence that They recorded Trump for over a year before he went into the presidency. It's no coincidence, folks. Everybody knew that Trump was going to run for the presidency. You know, anyone who was anybody that needed to know would have known that he was running for the presidency 2-3 years before. So it wouldn't surprise me to find out there's actually, you know, Obama's tapped his phones for the last 2 to 3 years. And what that means is that, yeah, it's bad, but what that actually means in the whole nutshell is that they would have known what these guys were planning. So these guys would have set in motion things to make sure, one, that Trump didn't win the presidency, which he did, and two, if he did, then they've sorted themselves out enough to be able to set up a whole process, excuse me, to go through this chess game, if that makes sense. So you're talking about a couple of years worth of stuff here. And, excuse me, you know, Trump and all them know that. They're not idiots. And to suggest that the other side are idiots as well is, you know, really, you know, how big of idiots are they? Because they've been doing this since 1930. Let's put it that way. And if people think that Trump's going to come in the first year, he's going to wipe the floor with these guys in one clean sweep, you are sadly delusional. This is going to take years, folks. And before it's finished, you will see bombs going off, civil war in places, war between countries, all because these people are not going to let go of power. And if you want to see how entrenched these people are, watch the State of the Union address, but don't concentrate on Trump. Concentrate on the Democratic crowd. Because if you want to see entrenched people, watch them. These people are super entrenched. They're so entrenched that it's actually really scary. These people were not looking at Trump like, oh yeah, well, this is some tosser down the road having a speech. They hate this guy. They actually hate him with a passion. And they're super entrenched. And you can only surmise that it's because he's got all the goods on him. He knows what's going, they know what's coming, and he's slowly but surely playing chess. He's killing them by 1,000 cuts at the moment. And see, that's scrambling their brains because they can't think, they don't know when the final blow's coming. So Trump is actually doing these great speeches and, you know, blah, 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 or America, USA, etc., blah, blah, blah. And this is killing the Democrats. They're just thinking, well, when's this guy going to drop the hammer? But he's not, because he's going to keep this going. He's going to release a little bit more information. Like next week, there's another memo coming out. And then after that, it'll be another memo coming out, and another memo, and another memo, and another memo, until it gets to the point where, you know, you have to turn the majority of the people over. Because Trump couldn't go out there at the moment and just call martial law, I don't think. Because if he did that, I think he would have a constitutional crisis because not enough people are awake. So basically, you've got to wake up enough people to make this all a reality. You can't do it without the people. Does that make sense? Anyway, look, I've got some stuff to show you, so let's go through that. Let's get this out of the road first. This is my prep account, my PayPal, Patreon account. Obviously, I haven't done many videos, so I haven't got many Patreons at the moment. But guys, as I said, my main task here is to get the freedom of information request down and done. And in that regard, it is happening. So please help me in, this is going to be a long slog. We're not going to, walk out to the crease and smack this over the 6 boundary in one go, guys. This is going to be 1,000 singles to the, we're going to have to do a lot of running. This is my PayPal account. If everyone wants to, if it's easier for you than doing the Patreon, I understand. PayPal is just a single donation. Patreon is graduated to videos, etc. So I understand if you just want to do $1 in PayPal, that's fine. Whatever you can afford is great, guys. Now, let me show you this. As I said to you guys, I've read the Australian Constitution, the original Australian Constitution. And what I've gleaned from that is the fact that the Governor-General is the Queen's emissary in the Queen's departure. Basically, what that means is that the Governor-General acts on behalf of the Queen. Because, believe it or not, we are still part of the Commonwealth and the Queen is still our head of government and is still the head of the country. And the Governor-General is actually the head of the army or the defence forces, etc., etc. But there's a little known fact is that the actual Governor-General is the head person as regards to finance. And this is from the Australian Constitution. Money to be appropriated by law. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury of the Commonwealth except under appropriation made by law. And it goes on and rambles and some stuff. And this law hasn't been changed as far as I can tell. So what this means is that the Governor-General has full authority to ask for and be given full documentation and to investigate illegal money laundering, if you like, or donations, for want of a better term, from the Australian government. So I've typed this out and I am going to send this off this week, but the difference is that I'm actually going to send this out as received mail at the other end where it has to be signed for, which I will be doing from now on into the future from anyone that I approach with this stuff, because you can send them emails and they can easily just say, no, I didn't get it. So once I finish the final draft of this letter, then I will be sending this off to the Governor-General of Australia, Sir Peter Cosgrove, asking him, as the Queen's representative, to look into the fact that these donations were illegal and that money has been stolen from the Australian taxpayers and from the Department of Finance. So I hope you guys get behind me with this, because that's where this is going, and this is where this has to go, really. Now, this is quite interesting. I'm going to put this link in the description box at the end of the video, but a gentleman called Joshua Marie sent me an email via YouTube and said, I'm a 20-year veteran in the financial markets and he's an Australian, and he's written a book about how this all works and how we're being ripped off, etc., etc. And he said, would I be able to promote the book on his website? And I said, on my website. And I said, yeah, no problem at all. Happy to help. So this is Joshua's book. So if you want to get into this book, have a read of it. I've only just found, which is another whole scenario, folks. I only just found this email today because I've found that what's happening is YouTube's actually censoring my emails, etc., very strongly. And I tapped on something, and all of a sudden I've got 50 emails that just come in from nowhere. So look, I can't explain it, but it is happening to me. So there you go. I haven't read this book as yet. I only found this out today. But as an Aussie, and he's an Aussie, I figured this would be if it's what he says it is, then it'll be a good book for everyone to read. So have a read of it. Do yourself a. One thing I wanted to say about Bitcoin, and you obviously can't say that we didn't tell you. I watched BP Earthwatch yesterday, and he had a video explaining what was happening with the world markets, etc. And once again, folks, it's all theatre. There has not been, I don't care what anybody says, there has not been a stock market since 2000 and, I don't know, probably 5, when they took over the stock market and they just started ripping off all the money around the world and selling debt to each other. That's when the stock market stopped being relevant. So it had a 660% 60-point drop the other day, and that's the market. And then Bitcoin dropped some outrageous amount of money. And I was watching BP Earthwatch, and he was telling people, look, this is how this works and blah, blah, blah. And he's been telling people as well that you're crazy if you got into this, because they are going to come after you. There's no two ways about it. Unless you're a Mr. Big Big, they're not interested in Mr. Big Big. They're going to come after you and your tax money that they want. And the IRS in America has already started doing that, and so has the government here and around the world. But I just want to point something out to you. If you had Bitcoin and it was 16,000 and it's dropped down to 8, that money in the middle, that never existed. It wasn't money. It's not money anyway, because Bitcoin, this is the treasury money here. Each year they allocate funds to run a government, to run the country. They don't go, okay, well, let's start another whole thing over here called Bitcoin currency, and we'll run it over here. That's not how this works, folks. There's only one way to run the system. There's not two. So these people who have got this second system are going to go down. Once again, do you think they're stupid enough to let you just willy-nilly run this thing, while everyone's running around making money, laundering money, etc., etc.? They've been sitting back, watching and waiting, folks, to see just how stupid people are with Bitcoin. It's not going to be a secondary money fix for everybody, folks. Never was, never is, never was. Because it doesn't exist. It's not part of the monetary system, and it's never going to be. And all these clowns that keep telling you, these financial gurus, etc., telling you there's going to be, they're idiots, quite frankly. And they need their bloody heads read. And there's only one thing that's kept it going, and that's greed. But isn't it funny that since it started to drop, as per expected, the people are starting to panic? There's people mortgaged their houses on this crap. So look, if you're stupid enough to be in Bitcoin, get out now while you can. And get prepared to actually pay a shitload of tax on it, because they're going to slug you for it. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually bring in 100% tax on it, because it is illegal. It's not legal, folks. It's not legal tender. It never has been. It's a pyramid scheme developed by somebody who wanted to launder a shitload of money. What don't people get about that? It's just common sense. Just amazing how greedy people are, eh? Anyway, going back to the matter at hand, I thought you'd find these articles interesting. This is from the ABC here in Australia. Donald Trump likes to release memo questioning FBI's handling of Russia probe. Donald Trump likely to release memo. Well, it wasn't actually Trump that was releasing it. It was the Congress Committee of Internal Affairs, really, wasn't it? So this goes through, gives Trump a whole pasting for doing this, etc. La 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 la. And right at the bottom, as you expect, Mr. Schiff said even Mr. Mueller himself would be potentially on chopping. That's because a replacement, Mr. Rosenstein, could decide to fire Mueller. In this article here, so how big could this be, right? If you read that, it's obviously playing along the lines of the American mainstream media, blah, 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 just crap. And as I said, Trump is playing this like a chess game. All these people in the media outlets are being led down the same path, folks. He doesn't care. He's just going to let them report on it, report on it, report on it, report on it. And what happens when the time comes and they release a video or whatever of the criminality or the paedophilia, etc., involved in these people? What do you think is going to happen on that day? And that's my point. What happens to all these media outlets? They'll get shunned and they will have to close. So that's where this is going. Now, this is interesting if you're an Australian, but it's also interesting if you're not, because of the fact that this actually happened. Here in Australia, while all this stuff's been going on in America with, you know, QAnon, the government, etc., etc., you can't believe this shit either, folks. You can't make this up. The Australian government, or somebody in the Australian government, got all the filing cabinets of the Prime Minister and the Senate's office and removed them from the building and sold them in a second-hand shop with all the files still in it. Don't you think that's kind of curious that it happened now? And if you want to, I'm going to put this one here, look inside the cabinet files. The ABC's been good enough, and I'll show you here, to actually download every single file. And as I said, I will be putting that link in the description box so everybody can read it. It's quite interesting. And it's absolutely hilarious that it actually happened at this particular point in time, if you know what I mean. So there's a fight going on, folks, between the good side and the evil side at the moment. And it's not just happening in the US, it's happening all around the world. Now, I just wanted to remind you guys, excuse me, of the Syrian war, which still isn't over, by the way. They're still fighting. And remember, I said Turkey was the big boneheads here. Now, the Turks are actually shooting the Syrians on the border if they're trying to escape, even though they're actually causing a lot of the damage in that part of the country. And here's the other thing. Russian jets shot down in Syria. This happened last night. and the pilot ejected and landed on the ground, so the militants killed him. So what do you think is going to happen now? It's my belief, has been for a while, that the Russians and the Americans are actually going to team up here, and they are going to literally lay the floor bare with Turkey and all the other, because let's not forget, Turkey has no interest in Syria except for extortion and oil. That's the only thing Turkey's interested in. They made billions out of the Syrian war, and the US and the Russians know it. They've been playing pussyfooting around with the Turks up until now, but I seriously think that they will actually turn around and turn on the Turkish government. Not so much the government, but what's his name, Recep Erdogan or whatever, who is an absolute demagogue, dictator, moron, and they are going to literally wipe the floor with him, because it's actually him that's causing all the instability in that part of the world, if you haven't noticed. You know, America shouldn't be there, let's be honest, neither should Russia, but Turkey going over and, you know, just laying waste to vast swathes of area that's in, you know, where the Kurds live is just not acceptable either. So it's a fraught environment, folks. And I said before, you know, before this is finished, Turkey will be the big loser out of it all. And here is the biggest load of bullshit reporting that you've seen in years. Hawaii man says he's devastated about sending false missile attack alert. You know, the bloke who walked into the, you know, the change of shift and chucked his lunchbox down and hit the button and it went off. Yeah, that bloke. If you believe that, folks, then you believe that we're all going to Mars to live next week. It's now proven beyond reasonable doubt that there was a missile fired at Hawaii and there was a missile fired at Japan. And they were both shot down by the Yanks. The protocol to actually send an alert is a 5-tier protocol, I believe. So it's not just one bloke who just sits there and decides he's going to, what the hell, let's have fun, let's just press this button, see what happens. That doesn't work like that, folks. It's a 5-tier protocol, I believe. Stringent. Even if there is a missile coming in, you still have to go through that process. You know, like a guy doesn't run down hallways with his arms flapping in the air, screaming about there's the missile coming and run through a room and smack his hand down on a big red button. That's not how this works. So if you believe this story here, then you're either totally gullible or very stupid. It doesn't happen, and it's been proven by that. I've got one final thing to ask you all to watch, and it is on Infowars. I'll put the link in my description box anyway. But there's a bloke called Jerome Corsi who you may or may not have heard about, and he's a PhD, has a PhD in security analysis, and he's working for Infowars and various other people. This interview that he does here is actually a very, very good interview, because he lays out in layman's terms exactly what all this means at the moment. The good thing about him is he doesn't get involved in too much hyperbole, and he actually has some good common sense. So I would say to you guys, if you want to actually find out exactly what all this means, then watch that piece, because it's actually very, very particular. You know, like I watch a lot of these stuff, and half the stuff I can't get past the second minute because it's all rubbish. The only one that I've started to actually really watch is Jerome Corsi and Hannity on Fox News. And the reason they do that is because they're very specific in what they're saying. I don't watch much Infowars on it, you know, because Alex Jones just runs his mouth off too much. And what he could say in, you know, a minute instead of 35. Although I understand his point and what he's trying to say, but you know, he just rambles too much. So look, get to the point and watch that Jerome Corsi interview. It's very, very good, folks. Very good. Folks, instead of doing the Bible Gateway verse of the day, I thought I'd read this one because I saw it last night on a video I was watching, and I thought, this is very pertinent. It's 2 Chronicles 7-14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sins, and will heal their land. So let me read that again. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. And folks, that kind of goes back to what I was saying as regards to what Trump's doing. You can't heal the land at present because there's not enough heads turning. But it's coming. It's coming. And folks, as always, I'm going to end in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power and the glory for ever and ever. Amen. Folks, and so endeth the sermon. Look, I just wanted to say a brief summary here. Look, unless you're living under a rock somewhere, let's just tick off a few things here. War in Syria, stock market crashing, Bitcoin crashing, the FISA Memo release, the entrenched parties going to war in America, the price of oil, the severe weather anomalies at the moment. Can I just tell you that here in Australia, I'm in southeast Queensland, I had to have jumpers on for the last 2 days. And it's the peak of winter. It dropped down to 15 degrees here with no humidity, none, just completely disappeared. So we had 2 full days of cold weather. And why? You know, I personally have stepped up my preparations a lot more over the last couple of weeks based on what I'm seeing. And that's not a hyperbole. I'm just telling you that's what I'm seeing. I'm just stepping up my buying a few more items and keeping my head forward and watching and listening. I've been doing a lot of listening this last week. That's why I haven't done any videos. Because I just didn't want to be another voice out in the bloody wilderness, bloody pumping out crap that no one needs to listen to. I do have some exciting news. I'm hoping to be able to interview someone very high in the conspiracy stuff, if you want. Well, it's actually reality. I'm going to call it the reality media next week, I hope. It was supposed to happen this week, but unfortunately, I got sick on the day that it was supposed to happen, and I couldn't do the interview. So I'm hoping that this week that gentleman will be here, and we'll be having a great conversation. And I'll tie in nicely now because we've got the FISA memo done. So look, it's just a word of warning. Don't get too entrenched in the current warfare situation. You just make sure you keep yourself and your family covered with food, water, everything you need. Petrol, go and buy 10 jerry cans and fill them up, all this sort of stuff. Just keep your ear to the ground. That's all I'm saying, and your eyes to the horizon. Okay? Right, everybody. God bless. Prep out.